Hi, everyone, and welcome to this year's BiblioShare presentation for Tech Forum 2021. I'm Tim Middleton, one of the project managers here at BookNet Canada. We put this message up in red over a year ago. Please note that while the BookNet office is on work from home protocol, rest assured that all our services are up and running as usual. All client services remain operational. First off, let me say, I never imagined we would still have that message up now. But one thing I wanted to think about was this part. All client services remain operational. Think about that for a second. All BiblioShare is really a big data pool. That's all it really is. BiblioShare is one big data pool. And yet, BiblioShare as a platform was immune to COVID right from the start. Now, I don't mean to imply that the digital product metadata supply chain didn't have its challenges, while finding ways to honor the social justice movements that are making change and addressing shortcomings in what is now available is a full-time effort. The chaos over author events and launches and when a book is going to market, a better way to categorize books, and the inevitable migration to Onyx 3.0 coming down. BiblioShare as a platform, though, was immune to COVID right from the start. That is kind of the beauty of the ability to create information in a way that makes that immunity possible. Metadata. Oh, how we've come to love that word. We have especially come to love and appreciate it during this past apocalyptic colored year. Metadata. What is it, you ask? Or maybe you didn't, but I'd like to share my thoughts about metadata nevertheless. Metadata for us in the publishing trades is any data about a book that is not the book content itself. And while even that definition is not 100% accurate, since paragraphs, layout, font style, all that design stuff for your content is really pretty much just metadata. What is a paragraph other than metadata for a line, which gets interpreted by a reader to mean a new concept has started? And then there's context even around paragraph, introductory paragraph, concluding paragraph, etc., and on and on. However, at BookNet and within BiblioShare, our focus is less on this print and design type metadata and more on the distribution metadata. Things that help your business partner and then help the consumer. Things like title, author, number of pages, description of the book, price of the book, supplier of the book, publisher of the book, publication date of the book, classification of the book, prizes the book has won, reviews of the book, keywords of the book. There's something like over 200 data elements that the Onyx standard currently defines for books. People are constantly trying to find the secret short list of mandatory fields they need to send. But oftentimes, at least for us, these lists fall far short of what needs to be supported and what should be supported. Even our own products are not good enough for us. But in reality, they fill a desperate need that is out there. So moving rocks today prepares you for moving mountains tomorrow. We live by that. I find it interesting that the word metadata came into play in the late 60s, taking its source of creation from the word metaphysics. If I were on Wikipedia, I would have to show my sources. In this case, I think it is the author Jeffrey Pomerantz. And like metaphysics, if metadata is doing its job right, it just fades into the background. Metadata is like the electrical grid that delivers power. Not many people think about the actual physical electrical grid, but everyone is aware of lighting or of the internet connection. Well, everyone was thinking about the supply chain recently, that's for sure. One of these huge cargo ships just plugged the whole supply chain from China to Europe, all across the world. The same can be said of metadata for books. If there is a problem with the metadata for a title, then that is when everyone's set to make a profit from the book really seems to register the metadata world. Until data is missing, it seems people don't like to think about metadata. But if you don't notice, rest assured your customers, consumers, retailers, librarians, etc., will notice or won't. However you want to think about it. Either they're going to notice your book or they're not. It's more likely they won't if your metadata is missing. Well, that is as much ruminating on metadata that I think we need to do today. After all, I'm not the standards manager at BookNet Canada. That is Tom Richardson, who has spent a good part of his life following the proverbial metadata rabbit down the metadata rabbit hole. And I think it's fair to say that Tom Richardson never metadata he didn't like. Okay, go ahead. You can boo at that bad joke. I know it's bad. I'm going to talk about BiblioShare by the numbers now. So if that's a problem for you, feel free to mute me. There are some big numbers in BiblioShare. Currently, BiblioShare contains 3.6 million Onyx 2.1 records. That's up 200,000 new records in 2020. And we have over 538,000 Onyx 3.0 records and counting. So that's up over 240,000 new records in that data set. And we do maintain Onyx 2.1 and Onyx 3.0 separately, since that is the way BiblioShare was built, and they are distinct. So you need to have both a 2.1 account and a 3.0 account in BiblioShare. Now, looking at our year-over-year growth, we see that, well, 2020 was an interesting year, at least for 2.1 Onyx data. We can see in the last 3 years, 2017, 18, 19, that we just kept getting more and more data, maybe flat between 2018, 2019, but we definitely saw a drop in 2020. So people were definitely not creating new metadata records, but the updated records, we saw a big jump in that, at least over 2018. We saw an average update. So what that means is you provide us with a new record in Onyx data, or you update a record that you've already sent to BiblioShare for Onyx. And then you update it, update the price or update the availability, things like that. For 3.0 data, well, we saw nothing but upward mobility in the 3.0 data. And this is, not a surprise, since there is migration going on from 2.1. 2.1 is deprecated now, is no longer supported by Editor, and yet people still are all tooled up to only deal with 2.1 data. 3.0 is making its appearance more and more these days. So we had 1,251 new records per day, and we had on average 9,532 updated. So what does that give us? In 2020, we saw 583,758 new records added to the data set. So that's a drop of 37% between 2019 and 2020. And then we saw a 17% increase in updates applied to records compared to 2019, a 17% increase in the updates. And then over to the 3.0 data, we saw a 65% increase in new records in the whole data set, and we saw a 29% increase in updates applied to those 3.0 records. New companies that were looking for a good place to send and store their data, we had 94 new 2.1 accounts added to our account list. So that was a 35% increase, and we had 22 new 3.0 accounts added. So that's a 32% increase. But remember earlier I said that if you have a 2.1 account, you should also have a 3.0 account. So some of these new 3.0 accounts will really just be publishers or distributors who now are providing us also with a 3.0 feed. So that is getting some lift there as well. In terms of the new accounts, we had 58 new publisher accounts, 13 supplier accounts, and 45 web service accounts. So just breaking this down, publisher accounts, that's a 33% increase, supplier accounts 69% increase, and web service accounts, that's a 27% increase. If you've heard about BiblioShare before, then you might remember that we have these different account types. And then when we receive the data, if we happen to receive data on the same title from both a publisher and a supplier, we will merge that data into an outbound record. And that's what goes into our web services. Now, people can just apply and subscribe to BiblioShare for the web services. That's a token-based service, and they don't have to send us any data. They just want to either get data for a development project that they have or for a plugin that we have, and I'll speak to that in a little bit. And we also have a Webform. So BiblioShare Webform 2020, we saw 40 accounts added. For the most part, the accounts that get added to Webform are either self-published authors or very small publishing houses who have maybe, anywhere between 10 and 50 titles. And so we saw a lot of authors wanting to get Onyx data. Webform allows them to create Onyx data and then provide it to BiblioShare for web services and for some of the other accounts that hit our web services looking for data. Cover images. So this is an Onyx data. BiblioShare also allows providers to send us support materials for their products, for their titles. These are all generally given to us in a subdirectory on the FTP that we create for them. And one of the big areas, of course, is a cover image. So a cover image will come to us with the ISBN, and it's generally a JPEG that we receive. And we saw an 8% increase in the number of cover images that the data set now carries. Interior images. So you might think of these as just well, in the old terminology, maybe it's still around, people called these blads. Sales reps would drive around with, half-made books in their cars and be able to pull them apart and show retailers what the inside of a book looked like. Very important for selling children's books. And interior images really got a boost when Catalyst started to display interior images as well. This year, 2020, we saw a 28% increase in the number of interior images that we received. Author images, we've been taking these for a while. This is a very slow climb and maybe not a perfect solution, since generally people think about authors of many books. In this case, we receive the author of the book. So an author image has to be an ISBN and a JPEG. So we saw a 6% increase in author images in 2020. And then some other resources that we also take. Now, these are not JPEGs. These are not images per se. These are, we accept PDFs or EPUBs of samples or excerpts. However you want to define that. We generally say a sample is just anything, from a book, whereas an excerpt might be a chapter, a longer piece of text. But you can think of it however you like. Before you decide how to name your file and whether you're going to send us a sample or an excerpt, you may want to take a look at some of the Catalyst documentation. Catalyst is displaying excerpts. So we now in 2020 saw a huge bump in samples and excerpts, and this was partly due to Catalyst again ingesting this material for display to retailers for sales support. We saw a 97% increase there. Reader guides, we saw a 5% increase, and table of contents, a 29% increase. Those aren't huge numbers, but still continuing to build that data set. And then we added, as you might recall last year, we had just added teachers' guides and back covers as some other materials, supporting materials that we accept. And teachers' guides got a big bump right away. We have 1,300 of those now, and back covers, surprisingly, we weren't sure whether people would be interested or would have available back covers to send us. Sure enough, they do. We have almost 10,500 back covers. So that's the data that we have in BiblioShare. That's what we've received this year. And it looks like there's still a lot of activity going on. There's still a lot more that we can get, that we will get. But the big question for people who are providing the data is, well, who's actually using BiblioShare data, and maybe what are they using it for? So I talked about our web services, and this is what the output of our service of the data. People can hit our web services. It's an HTTP request, and they use the token that we assign to them when they request a token. And so within that request, they have the EAN, they have the token, and they'll also have, depending on the resource that they're looking for, they may have the perspective if they want the author image or the cover image, if they want a thumbnail, or if they want the full image that we've provided. So we generally ask for the full images to be provided to us, and then we resize to a thumbnail so nobody has to worry about that. And so we had a huge year in 2020. We had almost 150 million non-BookNet requests come into our BiblioShare services. And I do want to mention, we do use our services as well. So we do eat our own dog food. We use it in Catalyst, Lone Stars. We use it in quite a few other products. And so we back all of the BookNet requests out just so that we can see what's coming to us through other parties. And so 150,000 from 129 users. So 129 people with tokens or companies for the most part, not individual users, but although we do give tokens to individual users who maybe blog about books or are reviewers. So that's a lot of data coming from or being requested from the BiblioShare dataset. A lot of discovery going on through these requests. So these are all the different types of requests that are made to us, and these are the numbers. So for the full Onyx file, that's one of our services, almost 60 million requests for the full Onyx. Image info, this is where people can hit a service to see if we have what images we have, when was it last updated, so you can really get that information before you hit the service to pull down a cover image, and just check to make sure that, oh, I've already got that image, so you're not making that request again. The full image and the image thumbnail, again, these are the two different types of requests people can make. Those are generally cover images. We call the full image just image for the cover, 14 million, 10 million. Interior images, BiblioSimple. So BiblioSimple has seen a big boost. We use BiblioSimple as a sort of a lightweight Onyx service where you get a stub of the bibliographic data, title, author, publisher, price, format. And we implemented the BiblioSimple web service in our WordPress plugin some time ago. So that gets used there, but it's also a way for people to be able to maybe display a snippet of data on a preview page before you drill into the detail page of a title. So I think that might be what's going on with the big number assigned to the BiblioSimple request. And there's that back cover. So that was really surprising to me in 2020. We had over 5 million requests for the back cover images, which is astounding. But people do want the full 360 view in the digital space of a book. So even if you might think that it's not worthwhile just having a little blurb or, whatever on the back of the book. It is actually very good support for sales. Bish assets, we provided that is to look at an ISBN to see all the different pieces that we have for it. Do we have Onyx 2.1, 3.0, interiors, covers, author, whatever we have for an ISBN, you can hit that service to see all the collateral that's available there. Shopify, we have a plugin that works in the Shopify platform, and we have quite a few users of that. I'll talk a little bit later about Shopify. We have almost 1.4 million requests for that. So you can just see those numbers. They start to trickle down. And there's our MARC record at 435. We'd really like to bump that up. We need maybe a little more direction from the library community, but this is based on mapping from Onyx to MARC that has been out there for a little while, but we're still only getting 435 a year on that stuff. So who are our users? These are the top 40 of our 128 users. And you can see white hots, United Library Services. There's a library bound in there too at around eighth place. And those are all library wholesalers, and they're just taking a ton of data from us, almost 50 million requests from white hots, and then almost 37 from United Library Services. So you can imagine they're taking everything they can get from us, the images and metadata. And then 49th shelf, some of you might think of that as the reader bound service for the ACP. Again, a heavy user of BiblioShare data, 33 million. Les Librairies, this is the Quebec independent retailer platform for e-commerce, and they started using BiblioShare data. I'll talk about them a little later. All Lit Up, again, another reader bound. Wilfrid Laurier, another reader bound. Playwrights Canada, another reader bound. So you can see we're really powering the independent Canadian publishing world through reader bound and with the BiblioShare data. And reader bound does great work, design work, and also is able to ingest Onyx from BiblioShare and works pretty closely with us at times on that stuff. Let's see if anything really jumps out here. You see a few bookstores in there. Once Upon a Bookstore, River Bookshop, The Bookshelf in Guelph. So those are interesting because those are our Shopify, some of our Shopify players, not the Bookshelf. The Bookshelf, they just pull down Onyx and covers, and they do sort of a gap analysis and grab whatever they need to get. Paragraph books over there in now around place 36 or so. Beggar's Banquet Books, that's a used bookstore, and they went just in the last few months, they went online. Janus Books, also in Guelph, Crying Out Loud, a little boutique shop in Toronto. So really lots of diversity in here, publishers, retailers, wholesalers, all over the place. And we do have international clients as well, although we don't really market to that segment of the publishing world. We really focus on the Canadian market, although we have had a number of requests come to us from Australia, Peru, Korea, all over the world. People are looking for this data. If you want to know more about our web services, that's the link that you can go to and read about all the different services and the format of the requests that you need to make to get the data, and all of our documentation around BiblioShare is in this general area as well. This one is specifically for data distribution. So it is for hitting our web services and getting data that way. So those are some of the numbers, some of the big numbers. Really interesting year, of course. If you wanted to drill in the data, that generally is over on the standard side. When we get questions about, what's happening with pub dates? Are they shifting? Are people using thema codes? Things like that. We can investigate and interrogate the data and find out all that information. We generally do that on a standard support side, and as well as educating the market. But I'm not going to go into that kind of information on BiblioShare. I'll leave that to the standards. But these are the 4 projects that I wanted to talk about in just a little bit, not too great a detail, but this is where BiblioShare has spent a lot of its time and some of the use cases that I find most interesting and successful. So the uptick in usage for retailers getting online, there was the Onyx 3.0 in Shopify, Bibliomatic version, and Lay Library. So let's just take a look at some of this stuff now. So bookstore builders. One of the big impacts we saw during the past year is the desire for businesses to get online. That's sort of a no-brainer, really. Anyone who's been paying attention knows that that's been going on. We saw this across the board with publishers, wholesalers, distributors, and retailers. BiblioShare, as stated earlier, was well poised to address this desire because we were already online, we were already digital, and we weren't being affected by COVID. The data in BiblioShare wants to be used digitally. We built the BiblioShare bookstore builder for Shopify back in 2014. In 2020, just since March 2020, we've had 35 installs of the bookstore builder. During that time, since we launched Shopify, we've had 100 businesses request the Shopify app from us. But in just the last year, we added about 1/3 of all of the Shopify installs that we support. The main interest in our app has come from bookstores who either didn't have an e-commerce solution or were not happy with the feature set of the e-commerce platform that they did have. And Shopify does all the heavy lifting for us with regards to the e-commerce piece, since we are really just populating the product data in Shopify, while all the latest, greatest web technologies are provided by Shopify, which does an amazing job of, just pushing things forward. Perhaps this number doesn't seem that impressive to you, but let me add the fact that we haven't published the bookstore builder app to the Shopify app store. So all of this is coming just through people coming to us from our blog, reading about BiblioShare and things like that. And they're coming from all over the world, as I mentioned earlier. So it's a very impressive as far as we're concerned that, 35 installs, because it's not just a matter of getting the data, it's a matter of, people making the choice to use Shopify and going from there. The other opportunity that came out of this demand to get online with Shopify, at least for us, is that now we have more traditional book retailers seeking to use the app. Initially, our app was built to support businesses that just wanted to add a limited number of book SKUs to their product mix. Then we found a lot of publishers interested in using the app because it was so closely integrated with their Onyx data that either they or their metadata providers were providing to BiblioShare. So this is now like the 3rd pillar of interest, traditional bookstores. It's given us a lot more feedback about our app. This is really what we've been waiting for all this time, feedback. Without it, we were just swinging in the dark, making guesses at how retailers would want to use the data and what Onyx to return to which field in Shopify. If you think about it in this light, the pandemic essentially gave us 6 years of feedback within 1 year. That is gold. So I can't complain about that. In 2021, we hope to add some of the great feature requests that we've received and get them supported in the bookstore builder. And of course, lest we forget, the other huge thing going on in BiblioShare land, or rather in Onyx land, is that Amazon has signaled their migration to Onyx 3.0. That means that we are receiving and expecting to receive even more 3.0 data as people ramp up to get in line with Amazon. Amazon, of course, just a lot of influence out there, and that's what we've been waiting for in the Onyx world, for a big player like Amazon to finally make a move, and that's what's happening. So what's a development house supposed to do? We had to build out the Shopify app to support 3.0 data. And we're so thankful to have had the opportunity to do this with House of Anansi, as they migrate their Groundwood properties to a Shopify solution similar to what they had already done with House of Anansi titles. We were involved with making some custom tweaks to our basic Shopify app for the House of Anansi site. So it was great that they turned to us to help with the next iteration of their Shopify site. Rose Shannon, who's an industry consultant and was hired by Nancy Groundwood to manage this project. Before COVID hit, we had all met and decided together that Onyx 3.0 was the way to go. And together we have built out the Shopify app to handle 3.0 data. This was an excellent project. And although there was a lot of learning along the way, not to mention a pandemic that basically blew up everybody's timelines, it's exciting to see one of our products being used with the new version of Onyx data. Moving on, another exciting project that got completed this pandemic year was a second iteration of the Bibliomatic plugin. As you may recall, Bibliomatic was initially developed as a Chrome plugin only. If you had it installed, it would recognize any valid ISBN on the open web and provide a little icon next to the number that, when clicked, would give the user a view of a snippet of the bibliographic data if it was in BiblioShare. This app got adapted pretty quickly since anyone could use it. You didn't need to be a subscriber or even a book industry player. It's open to all people. Many will be pleased to know that the plugin is now available for both Firefox and Chrome, and those are the links to the Chrome store for their plugins and the Firefox Mozilla for their add-ons. Also, in all humility, we can say that this little extension is now better than ever, with a much nicer and fuller design. Links to library data as well as sales data, and the ability to set some preferences that let you toggle on and off default data fields, not to mention the ability to set the running of the plugin to manual, so it doesn't interfere with other work you have on the go. And again, lest we forget, Onyx 3.0 data. If it is available in BiblioShare, then you can toggle between both your 2.1 record and your 3.0 record if you've provided both versions to BiblioShare. In this case, Catching Light, there's only 2.1 data, so it's highlighted in red. You click on the Onyx 3.0 toggle there, and you would see BiblioShare currently does not have this data. And then along the bottom there, you can see the links to Catalyst, library data, sales data, and the raw Onyx 2.1 record that's basically coming out of our web services. So you can check that, that view of the data, and the same thing for Onyx. And of course, there's one other thing to note here. And also for all of those who wonder, is our data available for Catalyst yet? We've provided the date when BiblioShare last received your data. So you can see that updated in BiblioShare, November 05, 2020. So we have provided the date when BiblioShare last received your data. And this is our outbound data. So this means it's come in, it's gone through our quality assurance tests, and then made it into our transfer and is now sitting in our outbound data. And that's where Catalyst picks up that data from. So if you see the date there that you're expecting, then you know that Catalyst is going to have your data the outbound data. Any changes that you made are there in the outbound data. So if you're looking to see a change file has made it all the way through our outgoing web services, you can just check that date and see if it has made it yet. So it's a really good tool to use in that kind of tool chain that you're using between Onyx and Catalyst and any of your other venues where you expect to see the data. You can do a quick comparison to see what was in your data that you sent to BiblioShare, and then you can see where a problem might exist. That's the way that I like to use it. I'm always checking Bibliomatic first, and then if I have to, I'll go to the databases and start querying in there. And the final project that I wanted to talk about that has been exciting, I'm proud of, I guess, is one that we actually had very little involvement with, which is kind of the point of BiblioShare. We have always argued and shown as proof of concept that anybody can use this data, anybody can use the web services for any kind of solution building. There might be some effort involved in getting the exact data that you want, since lots of companies sort of populate the data differently, but you can take care of that, and Les Librairies has done exactly that. You don't need us, you just need access to our web service, as long as you have some technical support to help you with the other things. Les Librairies it's an association that's made up of over 100 independent bookstores in Quebec, the Maritimes, and a few in Ontario. And the project that Les Librairies had on their docket was to enable the discoverability and sale of English language titles on the mostly French e-commerce platform. They approached us about using BiblioShare data for the purpose, and we were more than happy to oblige. And within no time at all, and at a particularly crucial time in the history of online retailing. So this project just launched just before COVID hit. These over 100 independent retailers had descriptions, covers, price, and more visible and available for purchase on their site. This website you can see there, you can put in the name of the bookstore and the postal code that you want to get the book from, and then that sale goes to that retailer. So this is something that I know that a lot of English language bookstores are looking for, and I know that Book Manager has recently come out with an API plugin that sort of gets to this. It's not exactly this, but it's starting to get there. This has been a very successful project. The organization is only too happy with the success of this project and is eager to do even more with Onyx data from BiblioShare, and we can't wait. So they have lots of plans, and they have a very agile development team that can put this stuff together. So that, in a nutshell, is what the year looked like from the BiblioShare platform. Going forward, we hope to continue to increase the holdings of 3.0 Onyx data and migrate all of our solutions to supporting 3.0 data. Of course, we are still in the throes of a major rebuild of the BiblioShare platform. And again, we're just looking for the cycles to be able to get big chunks of that project done. It's a huge project, and we just continue to learn more about it. We continue to seek your input and feedback on all of our products, and especially the mama of all other BiblioShare projects, BiblioShare itself. Thanks for joining me. And as always, don't forget to let us know your thoughts and feelings about BiblioShare. You'll be surprised at what you can do.